Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So yeah, it's true, I almost crashed the Subaru. Now it was not due to speed or racing or anything stupid like that. It was literally a mechanical problem with the car. So I'll just tell you quickly what happened. Doing about 15 or 20 mile an hour around a wet roundabout, a big roundabout, so it was very slow for the road. And the car just rotated. I was correcting it, had my arms crossed with the arms correction, and there was no saving it, it just spun. At that point, I drove the car home, I parked it in the garage, and I haven't used it since. I did jack up the rear, and I'll insert a video now to show you what actually caused it. Now as you can see, the rear wheel, there's loads and loads of play in that rear wheel. At first I thought it's probably your wheel bearing has failed. As time's gone on, I've got thinking, the play in that is horrendous if it was the wheel bearing. So I should have heard whining, screeching, any sound of a failed bearing, but there was none of that. The car drives like a brand new car. So I had a feeling that actually it was the castle nut that holds the drive shaft in place had actually started to back off. Now a lot of people, they think the castle nut on the drive shaft is literally there to hold the drive shaft in, but it doesn't just do that. The wheel bearing on this car is actually pressed in place, and if that nut is loose or missing, as the wheel's rotating and you're going around corners, it can literally wiggle that bearing off the hub. So those are my suspicions. There's only one way to find out. I hope it's not a bearing, because I have to buy an expensive 30-ton press. They're like 600 or 700 quid if I want to change the bearing myself, which I will be wanting to do. So if it is the bearing, I'm going to have to spend a lot of money on tools. Hopefully it is the castle nut, which I suspect it is. But there's only one way to find out. So let's go over to the Subaru and let's take a look. Now because of the play in the wheel, it would be easy to assume it was the wheel bearing at fault. But it's not always the case. That wheel bearing is pressed on, and the only thing actually holding it in place and stopping the wheel and disc from falling off is this nut here. Now if we look closely at this nut, I already know it's loose because I've tried to tighten it, and it's definitely loose. And the reason for that is there's actually like a little bend in the nut. Now either someone's touched it and they haven't noticed, or they haven't tapped it in, or they haven't torqued it up, or maybe it's just worked its way loose, although that's quite rare. But basically the problem is it hasn't been locked out here, and it's started to back off. Imagine how many times that wheel's turning, how much stress is on it, and then that pressed on bearing slowly works its way loose, and then we get this movement, what I've been experiencing, and what almost caused a crash. Now I did suspect this nut would have come loose because it's happened before my van, and on my last Subaru actually this nut came undone, but on the front, and I suspected it was this nut, because usually when this nut backs off you get play but you don't get any rumbling sound. When the bearing is failed you actually get a whining sound or a rumbling sound, which I haven't been getting with this. So it was quite a surprise to me that the back wheel was wobbling. So we're going to tighten it up now, and I'll show you the proper sequence so that we can torque it up without causing it to come off again. Okay, so the official torque spec is 146 foot-pound. So in this case I'm going to go to 147 because that's the closest number on my torque wrench. And as we can see, look how untorqued this is. So I can see the disc physically moving as I tighten it up a bit. It's being pressed now back on. I'm going to go and put the handbrake on really tight. Okay, so we've torqued it up. Now we've got to look for the marker on the wheel. The nut marker, the split, is a little bit off where it needs to be. So what we're going to do now, we're supposed to get a ratchet and tighten it up until the next time it lines up, which on this is only a couple of degrees. There we go, so it's lined up there. Then we're going to put a crowbar in. and smack the other end of it with a hammer. So now it's time to refit the wheel, and I'm quite confident the play would have stopped now. So we'll just refit the wheel and hopefully it's a cheap fix. So now the moment of truth. There's no play. There's a little bit of the bushes creaking back and forth if you really lean on it, but the car's also wobbling a bit on the axle stand. But yeah, it's pretty much fixed. As I suspected, it was actually the castle nut on the drive shaft that had started backing off. So really good, quite a relief, because I was looking at buying a press for the garage, a really good press, which are like £600 or £700, which I would need to be changing bearings and poly bushing and things like that. So I'm quite relieved I haven't got a fork out for one of them just yet, and it was actually a free fix. Now I've been trying to think, what's a moral of the story? What can we take away from this video, you know, to prevent this happening in the future? Even if I'm just doing little tasks like changing the oil, I'm going to wiggle the wheels and make sure there's nothing going on with the bearings or the castle nuts backing off. But secondly, and really the most important point, if you're ever working with a drive shaft nut, you really do need to use a torque wrench. If you don't use a torque wrench, it could back off, and ultimately that one nut is what's holding on your hub. So if you have 5 bolts holding your wheel on, well, what those 5 bolts bolt to is being held on with one nut. So if that one nut is not torqued up and it comes loose, well, ultimately your wheel could fall off. And yeah, really a close call. Now, it's been a bit quiet on the channel. I've had a little boy again. So yeah, got 2 little sons now. So we got a newborn baby in the house. I've also bought another project, which is actually parked in front of the garage. I'll probably be making a video on the new project soon, but it's not a build, it is a project. It will just be getting fixed and sold on, but I thought you'd probably be interested in it, so we'll be taking a look at that in the near future. And also I'm going to be going over the Subaru. We're going to be discussing all the things, what it needs to do into it before it's finished, and then maybe that can be sold on, and then we can look for more projects in the future to fix up and sell on. And one last thing as well, it absolutely pains me every time I come down the garage and see this here. So I really want to be getting the ball rolling on this Evo, but we'll be talking about that in a future video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.